let's just make a flower. So I might add some petals. So I always think this is kind of like sculpting with paint, okay? So this medium allows you to create a three-dimensional thing that you're then going to paint. With the modeling paste, how you leave it is how it will dry. So if you leave it with like a peak, it'll dry with a peak. Okay? All right, so this is modeling paste. Okay, the first thing that we're gonna do is just a flat painting. Okay, so you're just gonna take any color, and all you're gonna do with that color is you're gonna paint a square that is smooth and it's just all one color. Also, it doesn't have to be a square. If you want to do like circles or you want to be fancy and do something else, that is totally fine. I just do a square because it's easy. And then with flat, you want it to be as uniform and even as you can get it. So I recommend that you go back and forth until it's as nice and smooth as you can get, okay? And this one is just called flat. Next, you need to, I would switch to a brush that is a little more like small with like a more of a point to it, if you can. So the next one that we're gonna do is dry brush. Okay, so dry brush, just like watercolor. Anybody remember what dry brush was? In watercolor, it's literally what it says. Instead of getting your paintbrush wet and going into the paint with a wet paintbrush, which then makes the paint more watery, we're gonna go in with a dry brush, and we're trying to get our paint to be the driest paint that still moves across our surface, okay? So you're just gonna paint something, anything that you want to. Make it something recognizable, okay? So like a tree, an apple, a shoe, an ice cream cone, whatever. And you're not gonna use water, so you're just using your paint as dry as possible, okay? Let's see, I'll do an apple. And you don't have to do what I do. Like, honestly, you can do anything that you want on your own here. It does not need to look like mine. As we do this, when might you use a dry brush technique? Who knows? Anybody? All right, detail work. So anytime you're adding details, that would be the best. Hi. Mimi? Yeah. Oh. All right, are you guys okay with that? Unlike watercolor, so watercolor, if you remember much, you always paint sort of backwards. You start with your lightest colors and you paint to your darker colors. With acrylic, because of the thickness, the opacity, I don't know how to say it, whatever. Because it's not see-through, you can add lighter colors on top of darker colors. So you don't have to do it in the order of lighter to darker. You can still, but you don't have to. Yeah. So acrylic, you have a little freedom in that too. Okay, so this is just called dry brush. Scumbling is scribbling with intention. Okay, so scribbling with intention, so we're gonna do that next, scumbling. So it's another dry brush method. So you take a dry brush, you take some paint, and you're actually going to make little like loops, and you're going to have some white space that shows, and you're just going to fill a little section with these little scumbles. Clean your brush. This one is going to be Sgraffito, so I'm just going to label it, and then we'll come back. Sgraffito, if you're looking for the spelling. Next one is, we did this in watercolor too, but it's wet on wet. Do you remember what wet on wet was for watercolor? Okay, so you need to start with a wet canvas. So I'm going to get my clean paintbrush wet with water. I'm going to apply that water. Now I want it to stay wet, so make sure you've got enough water on there. Then, while that is still wet, I'm going to take a paint, any color, and I can use a smaller brush, I can keep with my big brush, it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to paint over the top of that. Just like a little design or something. Some lines. And add another color if I want to. When might you use my Sgraffito should be pretty dry by now, so make sure it's dry. I'm just going to take another color. I'm going to layer it on kind of thick, and I don't want it to dry yet. So before it dries, I want to scratch away a design. So we did Sgraffito in design. We did it with clay, with glaze, where we applied a layer and then we scratched away where we didn't want the glaze to be. Do you remember that? Same thing with paint. Sgraffito just means that you take it away once you have applied it, okay? All right, so it doesn't matter what color you use. Just remember we want it kind of thick. So I'm gonna put it on. I don't want it to dry. Once I get a layer on, then I'm just going to scratch away. And you don't have to do a letter. It's up to you. It was just the first thing I thought of. With watercolor, when we did glazing, we started with the lightest color first, remember? But with acrylic, you don't have to. You don't have to start with the lightest. It's going to do a very basic tree. So with glazing, I block out. So I told you about blocking out before, where you might use a flat. And that's basically what I'm doing. I'm using one color and I'm blocking out where my object is going to be. I'm not really adding any details at all. It's just the structure. So I said this with watercolor too. Glazing really is just painting, because it's not often that you do one color, other than maybe abstract painting, and then you just leave it. Like, you usually are layering details, right? You're adding a highlight, you're adding a shadow, you're layering the different colors. So we're gonna let that one dry. We're gonna move on to, impasto. Impasto, what you're gonna do is you're going to paint something, but you're gonna really gob the paint on, okay? And it's not about blending, it's about having there be some real rough chunks of color, really, okay? So what do I want to make? It doesn't really matter. You don't even have to make like a thing. So maybe I just like chunk it on. Okay, I leave big globs of paint. Now, if you're gonna actually do impasto and you want it to stay three-dimensional, then you want to add modeling paste. Because if you gob on acrylic paint really thick, it can take a really long time to dry, like throughout the whole gob. And it also can crack sometimes. And so the modeling paste is the way of doing that, where you won't get those cracks. But actual impasto just means putting big chunks of paint on, okay? And letting it dry so that it has some texture to it. Usually with impasto, you can see the brush strokes, and that's acceptable. Okay, we're gonna do another, let's see, make sure I'm getting all these done. All right, let's do, we're gonna paint a layer of paint, so do the flat. We're gonna let it dry, and then we're gonna come back to that one. So, nice and smooth. Now that we've used this for a while, can you recognize any differences between this and watercolor paint? Like, what are some differences? Anybody know? You guys are so quiet. For one, it stays put. So where you put it, it stays, unlike sometimes watercolor can move around your canvas or your paper. It's more opaque, meaning you can't see through it as much. So you can see how that might be helpful. Okay, this one is going to be masked. So we'll come back to this one once it's dry. Oh yeah. Okay, just like watercolor, drips or splatter. Now, if I took a big hunk of this paint and I tried to like splatter it on my paper, you're gonna have like just a big blob. And that's not really what we're looking for when we're talking splatter. So I would take a chunk of your paint and I would add some water to it to make it nice and fluid. Now you'll notice when you mix it, it's harder to mix than watercolor, right? And that's because it doesn't really want to mix with the water, okay? But it can if you work it in there. Now make sure that you have enough water where it can kind of drip off your paintbrush. You don't need it to be like so wet that it drips without you moving your paintbrush, you know what I mean? So you want it to be able to, if I tapped this, it would fall off. Okay, then you're gonna take a pen, a pencil, another paintbrush. You're gonna hold it about an inch from your paper, okay? And with my paintbrush loaded up with paint, I'm just gonna tap. Now, the closer to the paper, the more confined my splatter will be. If I hold it way out here, it's gonna be all over my paper, okay? So that's why we do that instead of just like flinging it, because when you just fling it, you don't know where it's gonna go. That's right, splatter. Okay, next is hard edge versus soft edge. I'm gonna show you what that looks like. So it doesn't matter what paintbrush you use. We're gonna start with hard edge first. So you're gonna load up on your paint, okay? A hard edge is just like it sounds. You would see a very crisp edge or line, okay? And one reason why you might not get a hard edge, and we're gonna do a soft edge in a minute, is when you run out of paint. So you wanna make sure that you always have lots of paint on your brush when you're painting straight lines, okay? Okay? Just for fun. I just did that for fun. You don't have to. Okay, so a hard edge, you load up on the paint. That means that there is a very nice and crisp line all the way around. A soft edge is where maybe you want it to kind of feather away to nothing, okay? So sometimes soft edges make your work look like unfinished, but sometimes, like if you're doing a bird and you want the feathers to just kind of like more organically, then you might use a soft edge. Okay, so soft edge is where I would take paint on my brush. I don't put very much on my brush this time. Okay, so hard edge, I load it up. Soft edge, I want it to kind of run out, like so, okay? So soft edge, a lot of times I see students that don't like that because it looks messy or it looks unfinished, and that might be because you might not want to use that for that particular thing that you're painting, but there's definitely times to use it, okay? So not very much paint, soft edge. We're gonna go back to our glazing. Okay, so glazing back up here. And I'm gonna add my details now. So I layered one layer that was I just was blocking out my colors, right? Now I'm gonna go in and add some more details. And by layering your paint on top of each other, that's called glazing. So it's, you put a layer, now you layer another layer, and then you layer another layer, okay? So I'm just going to make another tone of brown that's a little darker. And I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna just make some bark. add some darker to the underneaths of things for my green, leaving some of that lighter green on there. But glazing is just adding layers, okay? I'm gonna add a little yellow for my highlight. Where I think the light might touch. Okay, does that make sense for glazing? All right, let's go back then to gesso, might as well. So gesso, it should be dry, feel it. Feel the paper and feel the gesso, you'll feel that it feels more rough. If you wanted it to be smooth, you'd sand it with sandpaper. And now you can just paint right over the top. So I don't care what you paint, just go ahead and paint something. And you'll even feel that it feels like canvas under your paintbrush. Like there's a little grit to it. Okay, so now we're gonna do the gel medium. So we're gonna do a glossy and we're gonna do a matte, all right? So to start, we're just gonna paint a flat color, and then I want you to layer more than one color though. So I want you to just like have a little fun with it. So don't just leave it just one boring color. But we do want it to end up being nice and smooth. And you're gonna do two of them. One will be for our glossy medium and one will be for our matte medium. So then label one glossy and one matte.